The auditorium lights dim, and a low murmur rolls through the America's Got Talent audience. As the next performer prepares backstage, no one in the room has any idea what's about to happen. No clue that the next audition will become one of the most unexpected and emotional moments of the entire season, and certainly no one imagines that a humble Filipino delivery boy named Alex Reyes, still wearing the same scuffed black rubber shoes from his morning shift, would walk onto the stage and deliver a performance that would make Simon Cowell's eyes glisten with emotion. Moments earlier, Alex had been pacing nervously behind the stage curtains, his delivery backpack still slung over one shoulder, because he didn't have anyone with him to hold it. A producer had asked if he wanted to leave it backstage, but he shook his head, clutching it like a piece of home. It wasn't just a bag. Inside were his entire day's earnings, a small towel his mother had given him, and the crumpled paper where he had written the lyrics, to remind himself never to forget where he came from. When his name was called, Alex inhaled sharply, whispered a quiet "Bahala na," a Filipino phrase meaning "let it be, whatever happens, happens," and stepped into the bright lights. The audience, seeing only a shy young man in a faded red delivery uniform, didn't know what to expect. Some smiled politely, others looked curious, and a few wondered if he was there as a joke or gimmick. But then something changed. Something shifted in the air, and no one could quite explain why. Maybe it was the quiet determination in Alex's eyes. Maybe it was the way he stood tall despite trembling. Maybe it was the way he held the microphone with both hands, like it was the most important moment of his life. Or maybe it was simply fate, preparing the room for a moment that would resonate far beyond the stage before anyone could react. Howie leaned forward with a friendly smile and asked what his job was. Alex's voice cracked as he answered softly, "I'm a delivery boy, food delivery." A ripple of surprise and respect ran through the judge's table. Sophia nodded warmly. Heidi gave him a reassuring smile. But Simon, whose expression is often unreadable, watched him with quiet intensity. Then came the biggest surprise of all. When Heidi asked what song he would be singing today, Alex swallowed and replied, "I will sing Lupang Hinirang, the Philippine National Anthem." The entire audience froze. A national anthem on a get. No upbeat pop hit, no classic ballad, no acoustic cover. He was choosing the one song that carried the weight of an entire nation's pride. Even the judges exchanged looks of disbelief. Yes, people had sung their national anthems before, but Lupang Hinirang was different. It was dramatic, powerful, almost operatic in its structure. Singing it on a global stage was bold, risky, and utterly unprecedented. Simon adjusted himself in his seat. Leaning forward, "Why this song?" he asked, his voice unusually soft. Alex thought for a moment, "Because this reminds me of home, and I want to honor where I came from. Without the Philippines, without my family, I wouldn't be here." There was silence. Pure electric silence, and then the first note hit the air. His voice was not what anyone expected. It rose with a clarity that cut through the auditorium. Like a blade of light, he didn't just sing, he soared. Notes that were normally difficult for trained performers came effortlessly to him. Every syllable, every rise in pitch, every explosive crescendo of Lupang Hinirang felt like it contained the weight of every delivery he'd made under the burning Manila sun. Every long night he spent trying to help his mother pay rent. Every dream he'd tucked away, because life had been too hard to allow dreaming. The first 30 seconds of the performance stunned the crowd into total stillness. People leaned forward in their seats without realizing it, captivated by the raw, unpolished purity of his voice. Midway through the song, something happened that no one expected. The audience began to rise slowly at first, row by row, then the judges, one by one, stood as well. Even Simon, who almost never stands before a performance ends, pushed his chair back and stood with his hand resting near his chin, eyes locked onto Alex, as though he couldn't believe what he was hearing. And perhaps the most surprising moment of all was when Simon blinked rapidly and looked away for a moment, as though steadying himself emotionally. Were you surprised that a simple delivery boy could move an entire AGT audience like this? Tell me in the comments. But let's go deeper into the story, because the moment Alex walked onto that stage was only the beginning. His journey to AGT wasn't planned, wasn't funded, and wasn't supported by any vocal coach or talent agency. It started months earlier in a far quieter, far humbler setting, an apartment no bigger than a single judge's desk. Alex lived with his mother and younger sister In a cramped building in Quezon City, his mother worked long hours in a small cafeteria, doing everything from washing dishes to cooking meals. For a modest salary, his sister was still in school, and Alex, being the eldest, felt it was his responsibility to help support them. He began working as a food delivery rider at age 17, balancing deliveries with occasional singing gigs in small, barangay events. He had been singing since childhood, not professionally but passionately. One evening after a long day of deliveries, Alex returned home drenched from the rain. His mother looked at him with concern and joked, "Anik, you're going to get sick doing that every day?" But he only smiled and said he was saving for something. He didn't tell her what he didn't want to give her false hope. What he was actually saving for was a travel fund, just enough for a one-way ticket to audition for America's Got Talent. He had no guarantee he'd even be allowed in. He had no plan for where to stay, but he believed he needed to try because deep down, he wanted to show his sister that dreams were still worth chasing, even for someone as ordinary as a delivery boy. Every night after deliveries, he practiced singing in their apartment hallway because their walls were too thin inside. The neighbors sometimes opened their doors to listen. Some would applaud, some even gave him coins or snacks as encouragement. One elderly neighbor once told him, "Anik, your voice, yaning puhunin mo." Don't waste your talent. That simple sentence stuck with him. When he finally gathered enough money for the flight, he didn't tell anyone except his sister, Kuya. "Are you sure?" she whispered before he left for the airport. "Yes," he whispered back. "This is for all of us." He arrived in the United States alone, carrying nothing but clothes, his delivery bag and an old jacket. He didn't know anyone. He slept in a hostel. He walked to the audition venue because he didn't have enough money for transport, and the entire time he questioned whether he had made a mistake. Was he foolish to think someone like him, even with a powerful voice, could compete with singers trained from childhood, dancers with teams behind them, magicians with elaborate props? But then, as he stood backstage and heard his name being called for his turn, something inside him clicked. It wasn't about winning. It was about giving everything he had in one defining moment. Back to the stage, Alex had just finished the final line of Lupang Hinirang, and the auditorium erupted into the loudest applause of the night. People cheered so loudly that the microphone picked up a faint hum of the sound. Bouncing off the walls, some people in the audience were waving small Filipino flags. Others had tears streaming down their faces. Despite not even being Filipino, that's the power of authenticity. It transcends borders, languages, and cultures. Simon, still standing, took a long breath before speaking. "Alex," he began, his voice softer than usual, "I've heard thousands of singers. I've heard countless auditions. But this was different. You didn't just sing, you carried something pride, emotion, heart. You made all of us feel something powerful." The crowd roared in agreement. Heidi added that she had chills throughout the entire performance. Sophia praised his bravery for choosing such a meaningful song. Howie smiled proudly and said he had never seen someone transform from nervous to world class in just a few seconds, and then came the moment no one expected. As the applause died down just slightly, Simon leaned in and said, "This is one of those performances we never forget." He looked at the golden buzzer in front of him. The audience gasped. Alex's eyes widened. He didn't think this moment would ever happen to someone like him. And then Simon slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded from above like a rain of shining stars. The audience screamed. The judges stood again. Alex covered his mouth with his hands, shaking uncontrollably as tears streamed down his face. He dropped to his knees in disbelief. For a moment, he wasn't a delivery boy with an uncertain future. He wasn't someone who barely afforded a ticket to the U.S. He wasn't the young man who spent nights singing in hallways and waiting for deliveries in scorching heat. He was a star, a real star, and the entire world was watching him shine. As the confetti continued to fall, Simon walked onto the stage, something he rarely does, and approached Alex. He placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "You deserve this, you earned this. Never doubt yourself again." Alex broke into sobs, overwhelmed by everything. The journey, the sacrifices, the fear, the exhaustion, the hope, the miracle unfolding before him, the stage hands, audience, and even the AGT host applauded as Alex stood once more, wiping his tears and smiling through the confetti. His delivery backpack lay on the floor beside him, still zipped and dusty, but now it stood as a symbol of how far he had come. The moment was broadcast live, shared across social media, celebrated by Filipinos around the world. The hashtag Pinoy Pride trended internationally. People reacted with comments like "This made me cry." "This is why AGT is special. What a voice and Filipino talent always shines," as the video showed slow-motion clips of Alex's golden buzzer moment. The narrator's voice gently asked the viewers to reflect on the journey they had just witnessed. "Where are you watching from?" Comment below the story continued with Alex's backstage reaction as he walked through the curtains, still covered in confetti. He called his mother via video. The camera caught him saying, "Ma, I did it." His mother burst into tears on the other end. She had been washing dishes when he called. She didn't even know he had auditioned for AGT. She didn't know her son had just changed all of their lives. His sister also appeared on the screen, sobbing with joy. The emotional backstage footage showed Alex hugging the crew, thanking every person who supported him. He even lifted his delivery bag with pride and whispered, "We did it." It was a beautiful testament to humility, perseverance, and hope. The episode concluded with a montage of Alex's journey, from practicing in hallways to arriving alone in a foreign country, to standing on one of the biggest stages in the world. His voice played in the background during the montage, hitting the highest notes of Lupang Hinirang, echoing like a promise to himself and everyone who believed in him. As the final clip rolled, showing Alex raising his hands in gratitude on the AGT stage, the narrator leaned back into the microphone for the final message. If you were amazed by this performance, then click the video showing on your screen now to watch another unforgettable AGT moment that will leave you breathless.